Before we dive into the essay today, I just wanted to let you know that everything you're going to hear or listen to now is over on Substack. You can use the QR code on your screen if you're watching, or if you're listening, you can use the link in the description to head on over to Substack. Subscribe when you go over there, so every essay I release going forwards will be dropped directly into your inbox. And yeah, I hope to see plenty of people check it out. Okay, let's dive into this today. Okay, so in this essay, I essentially want to explore the following question. What has the Judeo-Christian religion granted the West? I think honestly wrestling with this question will enable us to explore what Christianity has given us and what, if anything, we are at risk of losing if we allow it to fall away. Western foundations. Let me pin my colours to the mast. I believe that the foundations of the West are underpinned by core Judeo-Christian principles. Principles which are now threatening collapse as the West ever desires to unshackle itself from its foundation and move out from under the dominion of God. My opinion on the question obviously isn't enough. So what I hope to do here is to explore why I hold such an opinion in the first place, to unpick my view, and to see upon this unpicking what Christianity has actually granted the West, and thus if my opinion truly holds. I understand that the Christian motif might very well be incorrect, and I've explored this elsewhere on my show and Substack. Still, regardless of Christianity's truth claims, it seems to be a fundamental reality, at least as far as I can tell, that the Judeo-Christian narrative stands behind the Western enterprise. This strikes people in a highly non-religious time as counterintuitive due to the widely held notion that we have outgrown the efforts and capabilities of Christianity within our present moral outlook and subsequent ethical outworkings. Surely, it is claimed, if Christianity was ever responsible for formulating Western ethical fabric, then its time has passed and it has been superseded. For example, many people like to point to issues like slavery and the reality that the Bible doesn't explicitly condone slavery, but was instead used to justify it at various times, as proof that we are living out moral ideals that are tethered outside of or beyond the Christian motif. But if this is true, what are these pegs staked into that would enable moral outlooks and ethical outworkings to be firmly tethered down? It has to be known ground firm enough to build upon, ground that can be utilized and depended upon, and pegs proven to instantiate contemporary ethical frameworks. Here's the reality. I don't think that this non-Christian ground and these non-Christian ethical pegs actually exist. Instead, I think our ethical frameworks, at least here in the West, are deeply Christian, even if we don't want them to be. It is easier to hate Christianity due to the evil that's been committed by it and in its name than it is to swallow the pill that it still instantiates the ethical fabric of the West. Christianity sets standards for societies and individuals that smack of archaic, hyperbolic demands within our hyper-individual age. These standards strike us as inappropriate, uncomfortable, and all too demanding, but that doesn't mean they aren't foundationally important. It is here that a battle rages, a struggle between those who claim Christianity reigned as an illegitimate king and shouldn't accumulate much, if any, credit for Western culture, and those who recognize the errors Christianity has committed as it has been outworked within Western civilization, and yet firmly believe it is the only possible bedrock upon which the West could possibly have come to be, and a necessity if it is to continue to stand. Judeo-Christian Threads. The ground Christianity has provided for stable tethering has been drawn up from deep time. Ancient Judaism was instantiated upon the idea of a known and knowable God, something utterly beyond us, yet willing to come to us and make itself known. As we can see in the Torah, God required atonement and sanctification in the form of animal sacrifice to enable humanity to enter his presence. Within this once blood-covered imagery, we first see the first roots of perfection, holiness, presence, sanctity and forgiveness beginning to take hold. I do not claim that it isn't possible to trace Judaism's roots even further back, to see worship of gods similar to other people groups in the ancient Near East at that time. Still, it is nothing short of a fact that something shifted within one of these people groups, later to become known as the Israelites, and their entire spiritual enterprise subsequently shifted with it. It is in these roots that we begin to see a story emerge through the prophets and kings, a story of 2 steps forwards and sometimes 5 or 6 back. It is a story of a people group trying to comprehend what perfection, holiness, presence, sanctity and forgiveness meant for them, their way of life, and how these motifs should be played out within their community. It is possible to trace these stories through the scriptures and extra-canonical texts of Judaism all the way up to Jesus himself, this deeply mystifying figure who, even if you take only a third of what is written about him and the words he said to be mostly true, then he seems to pull the Jewish threads of perfection, holiness, presence, sanctity and forgiveness together in an utterly unexpected way. Whatever you make of Christ, it isn't possible to argue that he hasn't captured the hearts and minds of millions, and that he winds these threads we've been following into something utterly unexpected. Christ pulls them into the figure of the God who walked amongst us, who lived with us, who was slain by us, and then, if we take the gospel accounts to be reliable, was raised back to life to save us. This tradition has obviously come down to us through the church, which has taken up our threads of perfection, holiness, presence, sanctity and forgiveness, and, for better or worse, purposefully tried to live them out. We see Christianity's evangelical movement start with Christ's words imparted to his disciples at his acclaimed ascension. These words, once again regardless of whether you believe them to have been actually spoken by the raised Son of God, have sparked a global mission to spread the story of a slain and raised Messiah. This figure pulls these Jewish threads into a movement that has gone on to capture the world. Christ, through his church, invited Gentiles, those outside of Judaism, to enter into a relationship with Yahweh himself, and the ramifications of this theological invitation are still reverberating today. These threads that we've been following had the power to subvert the Roman Empire. Christianity utilized the relevant peace Rome had brought to spread the word of the aforementioned theological hope into these now Judeo-Christian threads. It proclaimed that humanity's whole story had utterly changed unexpectedly and incredibly. This message has been so strong that even as the Roman Empire imploded and subsequently retreated from across the face of the West, Christianity embodied within the church remained present and intact, embedded within communities and societies, and playing a central role to the emerging kingdoms that picked up when Rome let go. Christendom. Christendom has endured for over 2,000 years as empires and kingdoms rose and fell. Yes, The face of Christianity has changed, and theological understanding has developed as the world has aged and humanity's thought shifted with it. But these now Judeo-Christian threads that we've been following, the threads we see right at the start of the Israelite story, these threads, I believe, underpin Western civilization. I do not claim that the canvas was clear before Christendom came to the fore. I have already highlighted that Christianity subverted the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire had picked up the pieces of the Greek, which in turn had picked up the pieces of the Persian, which in turn had picked up the Babylonian, and so on. Due to Christianity's heritage, the West still has motifs of Greco-Roman culture, much as it does motifs of Judaism. Christianity never intended to wipe the slate clean. Instead, it used what was available to it to outwork its threads of perfection, holiness, presence, sanctity, and forgiveness. We've seen these motifs arise in ancient cultures as well, in myths and legends across time and place. Whispers of what we witness actualize within Judeo-Christian narrative, hints of hope in the threads to come. The ramifications of this Judeo-Christian weave have, I believe, planted subterranean explosives under every civilization and cultural phenomenon that it has come into contact with since the very first disciples thought they had witnessed the risen Christ. The subterranean explosives have detonated, exposing civilizations and cultural phenomena alike, calling them to account, highlighting false motifs that could never stand the test of time, and calling these now exposed people groups to its banner. Christianity and its message of perfection, holiness, presence, sanctity, and forgiveness holds itself to account. Built within the story of the slain and risen Messiah is a ledger that needs balancing, a method of self-correction, of equality under God, something utterly alien to humanity both before and arguably since. Christianity, I believe, is self-correcting. Because of this, as the tides of culture have come in and gone out, often partially dragging Christianity itself with them, we see lines appear in the sand that spark correction and a call for overdue balances to be paid. These subterranean explosives that I mentioned a moment ago don't just call other cultures to account, they sit within the West's foundation as well. We've seen them detonate under us, demanding moral change as its threads are threatened, but this time from within. Take the idea of biblical repentance. It isn't just personal. It holds the power for societal redemption. It has shaped institutions, reformed laws, demanded countless struggles for equality, and birthed movements that have challenged oppression across the world. Without this inbuilt need for self-reflection and renewal, without these subterranean explosives, all of which are firmly grounded in the notion of a higher transcendent standard, the West as we know it wouldn't exist. Even our secular ideals of human dignity and progress, if we trace them back to root, are all built within the scaffolding of Christianity. Other systems may inspire loyalty or enforce conformity, but they lack the capacity for reinvention and the relentless call to seek justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with God. These are not mere ideals, but the very living principles of the Judeo-Christian ethic, commands that have toppled tyrannies, freed captives, and called humanity to forgive as we are forgiven. This self-correction has kept Christianity alive as empires rose and fell. The same power still reverberates beneath the surface of the West today. When the early disciples realized that they believed they had experienced the risen Christ, I don't think slavery was ever safe again. Why? pick up our threads of perfection, holiness, presence, sanctity, and forgiveness, threads that, as they are worked out within Judeo-Christianity, seem to ensure it holds itself to account. It is not a far stretch to suggest, in the case of slavery, that the notion that all are equal under Christ had the power to change nations, as we've seen, and that Christianity, arguably, still holds the power to change the world. Conclusion. So what has the Judeo-Christian religion granted the West? I think a strong case can be made that the answer is possibly everything. And what is going to happen if we continue to take an axe to the tree of Christianity? Ironically, given how frustrated I am with Christendom, I think the answer might well be our undoing. Suppose we manage to sever the threads underpinning our most cherished values, our Judeo-Christian threads of perfection, holiness, presence, sanctity, and forgiveness, which have established Western civilization. In that case, Western civilization would begin to drift upon the tides of culture, now untethered, unanchored, and with no North Star to point us home. I can't see how an untethering would take us anywhere than to places we really don't want to go, and I can't think of a more potent metaphor for Matthew's wide road that leads to destruction. I want to be clear here. I do not claim that Christianity has done no wrong. I think that Christians have used the banner of Christianity for much evil in the last 2,000 years. But to the chagrin of many, including myself, this does not mean Christianity itself is where we should level our axe. Rather, it is here that I think we might be called to sit, and maybe even to be pruned. This is a bitter pill to swallow indeed, for the bride of Christ has brutally wounded me. The scars she left have never healed, and I'm not sure they ever fully will within this life. Another irony is not lost on me. I can't find the Christ of Christianity, yet I seem enamoured with his work and how it reflects his face. I hope you enjoyed this video and audio essay. I read all comments, and I really appreciate it when people leave me thoughts and feedback and reflection in the comments section over on YouTube. So if you don't mind diving into that, let me know your thoughts to this video essay. I've got a few more that I've already written that are going to be released in due course, but if you've got any ideas of things you want to hear me talk about or explore, please do let me know in the comments over on YouTube. It's much appreciated. And if you want to support Kirsty and me as we create content like this, as we go through our scripts, we do our editing, we release in a constant cadence, then please do check us out over on Locals and support us over there so we can continue to do this stuff. All right, enough of that. Cheers.